note down, because this can help you in your practice, even if you may not immediately realize the importance of this subject matter. But once you start realizing that I do face these obstacles, because it takes some level of advancement in our Krishna consciousness to even realize that I am facing these obstacles. So we may not find some of these subject matters very relevant right now, but as and when you become serious, you will realize that, oh, actually I was facing, it's not that I have started facing these obstacles now. Actually, I was already facing them, but now I am sort of out of my stupor, that I am actually able to even realize that I have been facing these obstacles and I may continue to face these obstacles in future also. So I better have some guideline as to how I can overcome these obstacles. Okay, so the four kinds of obstacles are, I will tell the Sanskrit terminology and I will translate it for you in English. The first is called as Asat Trishna. So Asat Trishna means a deep attachment to things of this world. So this can act as a very powerful obstacle. Asat Trishna, a deep attachment to things of this world. This is one. The second is Hridaya Daurbalyam. Hridaya Daurbalyam means weakness of heart. So what this is, we will elaborate on each of these four briefly. Hridaya Daurbalyam is weakness of heart. This is the second obstacle. The third obstacle is called as Tattva Vibhrama. So Tattva Vibhrama means improper understanding of the nature of things in spirituality. So just like if you start to understand physics, then you need to understand the basic concepts of physics clearly. But if you have an improper understanding of how law of gravity works or many such things, how they work, if you don't have a clear understanding, then that is called as then you cannot solve the subsequent problems properly. If the conceptual understanding is very weak, then problem solving becomes very difficult. So therefore the third obstacle is called as Tattva Vibhrama, or improper understanding of the essential principles of spiritual life. And the fourth obstacle is Aparad. Aparad means offenses. So we may commit offenses while practicing devotional service. So devotional service can be practiced without offenses or with offenses. Offensive practice of devotional service is very ineffectual. Okay, so these are the four main obstacles in our devotional service. Now we will slightly elaborate on these four, and then we will open up the floor for some discussions. So the first obstacle that we discussed was Asat Trishna. Asat Trishna means attachment to things of this world. So when we are too much attached to things of this world, it takes our attention away from our own spiritual progress. So this Asat Trishna can be of four types. Okay, first thing is attachment to things of this world. Like for example, we may be attached to our own salary. We may be attached to owning a very the latest model car or something like that, or a huge house way beyond what we need to actually maintain our lives, like that. So this is called as attachment to things of this world. Then if you are little more advanced, then you may know that there are heavenly planets in which there is a lot of pleasures, heavenly pleasures, which are way superior, uh, unimaginably more superior to what you find in this material world. So this is second type of material attachment. The third kind of material attachment is for mystic power. Mystic power means ability to remote control things, people, everything. So we want controllership over people, we want controllership over companies, we want controllership over everything. We want to be the controller. So that kind of a desire may come in this material world. We all are attached in that direction also. So this is the third type of asat trishna. And then the fourth type of asat trishna is attachment to not wanting to suffer in this material world. Okay, so maybe many of us have had, or at least some of us have had, a very terrible experience living in this world. It has been a very, very difficult thing. So therefore we think, look, I'm willing to do anything as long as you get me out of this nonsense. I don't want to suffer anymore. So that is our prime focus. Sometimes when we may get completely caught up in not wanting to suffer. So of course this is a natural human tendency, but then this is not the highest pleasure. The highest pleasure, not suffering, is not the highest pleasure that one can potentially experience in this world. The highest pleasure that one can experience in this world is experiencing the pleasure of having a relationship with the Supreme Lord. That is the highest pleasure. But as you might see in this material world or anywhere, the biggest obstacle to choosing the topmost choice is attachment to the second best choice. So the greatest obstacle to get attached to the topmost choice is attachment to the second best choice. So when you're attached to the second best choice, which is liberation, not wanting to suffer in this material world, that actually makes us completely distracted in our endeavor to establish a relationship with Krishna, which can give us the topmost pleasure. So these four types of attachments we may have: attachment to facilities and comforts of this world, attachment to facilities and comforts of the heavenly planets, or attachment to controllership or mystic powers, and the fourth thing is attachment to not wanting to suffer in this material world at all. So these four attachments are categorized under the category of asat trishna, or too much attachment to material things which can distract us from our spiritual progress. So this is the first that we have discussed, first category, asat trishna. Now coming to the second category, of course, after we elaborate on these four categories, I will spend one minute elaborating on how we can overcome these obstacles. Okay. The second category that we discussed, can someone recollect what was the second one? Can you unmute yourself and speak?
Hridaya Daurbalyam.
Yeah, Hridaya Daurbalyam. Thank you. So Hridaya Daurbalyam, as we discussed, is weakness of heart. So when we sometimes we say that, my body is weak. So body generally is weak because it is malnourished. So malnourishment of body leads to a weak body. Similarly, when our heart, which is willing to pursue a spiritual goal, sometimes that heart which is willing to pursue a spiritual goal can also be malnourished. And that malnourishment is seen through some symptoms. Can you share if the body is malnourished, there are some symptoms of a malnourished body. I think last week, some doctor, I think it's Jay Prabhu, I think he's probably a doctor. So he shared, he has some questions. So some of you who may be aware, what are the symptoms of a malnourished body? Would someone like to share?
You cannot breathe.
You cannot breathe, okay.
You run out of breath when you run.
You run out of breath when you run. Okay, that's a particular type of malnourishment. Okay, correct. Anything else?
Fatigue.
Fatigue. Yeah. If you're not sufficiently nourished, you may feel very quickly fatigued, very tired, like that. So like that, there are symptoms of a malnourished body. Similarly, when someone's heart is spiritually malnourished, it has some symptoms. What are the symptoms of a malnourished heart? First is envy. Envy means when we see someone else progressing more than us, then it starts burning our heart. So this is the first symptom of malnourished heart, which is envy. We start becoming very jealous and envy of others when they progress more than us, when they move ahead of us. The second symptom of a malnourished heart is desire for fame. I want to be more famous. Everyone should know me. They should sing my glories. And when a group of people are getting together, I should be the topic of discussion. They should be discussing about me. So this craving for fame, this craving to be the center of attraction, wanting to become famous, one may see this as a symptom of progress. In the material world, it is seen as a symptom of progress, especially with this social media boom. Everyone is obsessed about how many likes, how many dislikes, why people have disliked, how could people dislike, or how many people have seen my video, and all these things. These are all this obsession with wanting to become famous, wanting to be known, wanting to be the center of attraction. This has become so disgustingly prominent in today's day and age, especially with the social media boom. People spend hours and hours together just discussing, on the internet, either on their Facebook or Twitter or whatnot. So that actually is actually a symptom of malnourishment. Actually, we have to see it that way. That is the truth. These are symptoms of malnourishment. A malnourished heart is obsessed with wanting to know who is following me, who is talking about me, how many people have seen, how many people have liked. So which means you are seeking nourishment from these things, which means internally we are hollow. We are not sufficiently nourished at all. So when we have this craving, rather than indulging in this craving, we have to sit and introspect. Am I so malnourished that I am seeking nourishment from all these things? So this is a symptom. Craving for fame is a symptom of actually a malnourished heart. Then the third symptom of a malnourished heart is deceitfulness. When we are actually not so advanced, but we want to show to others that actually I'm very advanced, so that people have a very good opinion about me. So deceitfulness, trying to be deceitful. And when someone actually is maybe doing something good, you try to find some fault with them. Oh, actually, all said and done, I know how he was, few years back, like that. So So this fault finding nature, when you see others actually flourishing and wanting to hide our own weaknesses so that people may continue to glorify us, people may continue to hold us at a very great esteem. So this is also a symptom of malnourished heart. The heart is not sufficiently nourished uh, with spiritual potency, with the spiritual, you can say, like vitamins and minerals. It's not sufficiently nourished. That is the third symptom. And the fourth symptom of a weak heart, a malnourished heart, is attachment to objects not related to Krishna, or attachment to objects which may distract us from Krishna. Like for example, internet has all its good utilities. Like for example, this is a very good utility of internet, that we are utilizing it for a good purpose. But with all these good utilities, it also has its own flip side, and sometimes we may get attached to the flip side of internet, smartphones, and all that. Okay, so being too much attached to things not related to Krishna is also a sign of weak heart. So in this way, we discuss 4 types of asat trishna and 4 types of hridaya daurbalyam, weak heart. Okay, of course, uh, uh, while we are discussing, some of us may become overwhelmed, because one after another, literally probably we are suffering from every one of these obstacles. But of course, we will not leave you high and dry, making you feel very guilty at the end of this discussion, because we will be discussing some tangible solutions to these problems also. So please don't feel dejected or depressed hearing, oh my God, it literally looks like the person is reading my heart. Of course, these are common problems which all sadhakas go through, so you can take some heart from that. Everyone goes through this in a small degree or to a greater degree. So we all are here to struggle and overcome these obstacles through a collective effort. That's why we all have assembled here, even though not in a single room, but at least in a single Zoom, we all have assembled together, so that we can make a concerted effort, a collective concerted effort to overcome these obstacles. Okay, so on the third obstacle, can someone recollect what was the third one that we discussed?
Tattva Vibrama.
Tattva Vibrama. What is Tattva Vibrama, Prabhu?
Misunderstanding of principles.
Misunderstanding of essential spiritual teachings. Not having a very clear understanding of the essential spiritual teachings. This is also of 4 types. Okay. So first is called as Swatattva Vibrama. Swatattva Vibrama means not having a clear understanding of oneself. This is very serious. Because the first teaching of Bhagavad Gita, what is the first teaching of Bhagavad Gita? Can someone say?
You're not the body but the spirit soul.
So you are not this body but you are the spirit soul. That is the first teaching of Bhagavad Gita. So one may not have a clear understanding of this, what it means to not be the body, what it means to not be the mind, what it means to not be the intelligence. So and what it really means to actually be the soul. So one may not have a very clear understanding of this. With unclear understanding, the practice becomes very ineffective. So this is first type, Swatattva Vibrama. And eventually when one progresses little further, not only are we supposed to realize that we are not this body but we are the soul, but we are also expected to realize that as a soul, my activities, the activities that can nourish me are in serving Krishna. Jivera Swarup Hoy Krishnera Nityadas. My original constitutional position is to serve Krishna, and in serving Krishna, I can extract maximum pleasure. So that is the understanding. So one has to have that clear understanding and one should act on that platform. So that is the first kind of Tattva Vibrama, not having a proper understanding of one's own self. The second understanding is, the second aspect of this Tattva Vibrama is Paratattva Vibrama. Paratattva Vibrama means not having a clear understanding of who Krishna is. So one may think that, oh, if Krishna is controlling my life and he is putting me under trouble, then he must be a very perverted person. He must be getting some pleasure out of putting me in trouble. How can I worship such a person? Or thinking that, oh, I have to worship him. If I don't worship him, he will trouble me so much. Like that. These are all improper understandings about the absolute truth. Okay. So this is called as Paratattva Vibrama. The third is called as Bhakti Tattva Vibrama. Bhakti Tattva Vibrama means improper understanding of the practice of devotional service. How devotional service is supposed to be practiced. If we don't have a clear understanding of this, this will also lead to problem. What should be practiced, what should not be practiced, what constitutes bhakti, what does not constitute bhakti. This is all important things. If we don't have a clear understanding of this, this will lead to problems. And the fourth problem is, fourth type of Tattva Vibrama is Bhakti Pratikula Vastu Tattva Vibrama, which means not clearly understanding that what is favorable for one's practice of bhakti and what is an obstacle in one's practice of bhakti. So if we don't have a clear understanding of it, we may start chasing after the obstacles. So fame, glorification, in order to progress more people should glorify me, we may think like that. Or I should be the best dressed person in the satsang program that that's going to happen. If I'm best dressed, then people will glorify me, then it's a symptom that I am progressing. Like that. Whatever, these are all various kinds of improper understandings about what constitutes progress in bhakti and what is an obstacle to one's progress in bhakti. If that clear demarcation, if that clear understanding is not there, then that is the fourth type of Tattva Vibrama, which is Bhakti Pratikula Vastu Tattva Vibrama. Okay. So we have now discussed 4 types of Asat Trishna, 4 types of weakness of heart, Hridaya Daurbalyam, and 4 types of Tattva Vibrama, or improper understanding of the essential teachings. So one more 4. The last thing is, what is the 4th obstacle? Can someone share?
Aparad.
Aparad. Yeah, correct. So aparad means offenses. So of course, this is a very big topic we could discuss for days together, but I will just, offenses are of 4 types again. First is offenses to the deities. So I am sure you all must be having at least a photograph, or sometimes you may have had an experience of visiting a temple, and in temples you have the deities Radha Krishna or Jagannath, Baldev, Subhadra, or Gaur Nitai, like that. So we may approach the deities in a very offensive way. There are various kinds of offenses. That's a whole different discussion. We will discuss it a little later. And second is very easy to understand, but very difficult to follow or avoid, which is offending other devotees. So this is little more difficult to follow because when two people come together, the first thing that is immediately visible is their faults. So to not offend them is very difficult. So, but it can be a very potential obstacle in our progress. The third is offending the holy name. You all must have probably heard the 10 offenses to the holy name. Okay, if not, one day we can discuss about that. And the fourth thing is very common, often being offensive to all other living entities, being very dealing with them in an insensitive way, sometimes in a violent way, in a very disrespectful way to any living entity. They may be devotees, they may not be devotees, but that is also considered under the category of aparad or offenses. Okay, so in this way, we started out with 4 obstacles, but we branched it out to 16 obstacles. Okay, so now we are going to discuss the solutions to these problems, because otherwise the whole thing sounds very hopeless, because we may feel we may realize that all of us are infested with most of these or all of these obstacles in our own practice of devotional service. Okay, but before we move on to discuss the solution part, I want each one of you, or at least a few of you, to share the 4 types of each, the 4 kinds of obstacles. 4 obstacles we discussed, and within that 4 subdivisions we discussed in each one of those 4. So one of you can start, but I would like others also to participate. Yes, Prabhu. Who is going to start? What is the first type? What is the first type? What is the first obstacle?
Asat Krishna.
Excessive attachment to material things.
Okay, yeah. And what are the 4 within that?
One was attachment towards the articles of the world,
Okay,
resources of the world, basically. Then second was attachment to the heavenly planets,
yeah, heavenly pleasures.
heavenly pleasures. Then I can't recollect the third and the fourth.
Okay, what is the third?
Attachment to controllership of the mystic powers.
Attachment to controllership. I want to be the controller. I want to be remote controlling everyone, everything, every project. Yeah, like that. That is the third. What is the fourth?
Attachment to
wanting to suffer in this world.
Attachment to not wanting to suffer in this world. I don't want to suffer in this world. Which is indicative of attachment to liberation. So these are the 4 types of Asat Trishna. Okay. So now we will see the solution for this, and then we'll move on to the next. So I can see your videos, at least some of them, whoever has it on. So can you please raise your hands? How many of you have at least attempted to read the book Nectar of Instructions? Nectar of Instruction. How many of you have read or attempted to read? Okay, I see some of you have your hands up. Okay, that's good. So if you have not, then this is a very basic fundamental book, very small book. It has only 11 verses. So if you can, whenever you get time, if you can read it, it's a very powerful book. It has literally whatever you need to progress in spiritual life, everything is given in a very beautiful condensed way. So in the second verse of Nectar of Instruction, the author, his name is Srila Rupa Goswami, who is the foremost acharya or the saint in our disciplic succession. He has written Atyahara prayasascha prajalpo niyamagraha janasangascha laulyamcha shadbir bhaktir vinashyati. He says 6 things which one needs to avoid if one has to progress in spiritual life. So atyahara means when you get an opportunity to collect things or when you get an opportunity to eat, don't over collect or don't overeat. Okay, because if we tend to over collect or overeat, it will make us very much attached to things that we are over collecting or overeating. Just take whatever is necessary. This is a simple practice which we can try to cultivate. Okay, now I have come to this is a buffet. I have paid for it, so I should stuff myself as much as possible so that I can, every penny that I have spent is fully utilized. So we should not think like that, because eventually we will end up spending much more for our medical expenses. So therefore, so this is atyahar. Avoid atyahar. When you get an opportunity to eat or collect, whatever you need, take that much. So that will make you not so attached to things of this world. Prayasa then means over endeavoring for things of this world. Somehow I have to do one PhD in today's day and age. No one values. I need to have at least one more. Like that. This is like over endeavoring. So one PhD, if you are already pursuing, please do a good job. I'm not trying to discourage you. So that is good enough. But I mean, if you are still very inspired, you can go for a second PhD, but don't compromise on your chanting and other such things. So that is prayasa. Then prajalpa. Okay, prajalpa is whiling away time in discussing non-Krishna conscious topics. Politics, sports, various other things which are just waste of time. I mean, better you get engaged in doing your second PhD if you have too much attachment to all these things. Unnecessarily whiling away things in non-essential subject matters. That is called as prajalpa. So because these things enhance our attachment to things of this world. So then you become overly become attached to so many things. You watch sports. I remember when I was in the United States, I grew up in a school which encouraged sports. I was very interested in sports, and when I came to United States, I that interest continued actually. And because I stayed in Pennsylvania, so I was a big football fan. So, and Penn State was a very good football school also. So I used to watch Penn State, and also I was a big fan of Philadelphia Eagles, the football team of Pennsylvania. It has two football teams. One which I was rooting for was Philadelphia Eagles. You get very much attached, and literally you keep following the conference games. And if you are attached to Philadelphia Eagles, it's not necessary that you will watch only their game, because when it comes close to playoffs, how the other teams fare also, it influences whether Philadelphia will qualify for the playoffs or not. So you will start watching other games also, and it takes so much of your time away, and it makes you attached to Philadelphia Eagles rather than Krishna's carrier Garuda. We get attached to Philadelphia Eagles like that. And so this is prajalpa. So too much engagement in other things of this world, you get attached by discussing unnecessary things not connected to Krishna consciousness. Then niyamagraha. Niyamagraha means too much getting attached to the rules while not understanding the essence of those rules. Or being very neglectful towards following the rules of bhakti. When we become very neglectful, then we don't understand the profound effect that following that rule has in purifying our heart. So and then eventually our heart remains impure only. Okay, so this is atyahara prayasascha prajalpo niyamagraha. Then janasanga. Janasanga is too much attachment to people or things which are detrimental to bhakti. Like not only prajalpa can happen between two devotees also. Okay, but we may go out of our way and seek the association of those people who are absolutely materialistic. Okay, way beyond what our profession recommends. Our profession may recommend that we have to interact with our professors, with co-students for completing the homework and all that. We need to do that, or we need some help in our research work, we need to approach. So all that is fine, but way beyond that we may go and start interacting, like today's janasanga or asatsanga, it's all on the internet only. We may associate with so many various people, websites and other things which may not be very favorable for our Krishna consciousness. So this is also a very powerful way by which we get attached to things of this world. And laulyam. Laulyam means pursuing one's greed for things of this world. Very aggressively pursuing greedily for accumulating things of this world. So if we consciously try to avoid these 6 things, atyahara prayasascha prajalpo niyamagraha janasangascha laulyamcha. So these 6 aspects in our day-to-day life, these are like, we can be conscious. You can maybe put your, if you have a whiteboard in your room, you can write down, or if you have post-its, you can post it. Am I aggressively over accumulating, overeating, over indulging any of my senses, or am I aggressively engaged in over endeavoring for things of this world which may not necessarily be needed for my spiritual progress? Or am I indulging in idle gossiping with people, just whiling away my time? Or am I neglectful of the essential rules of bhakti which may help me progress fast? Or am I associating with people or spending time in all these social networking websites and all those things unnecessarily, connecting with people who may not necessarily enhance my progress in spiritual life? Or am I aggressively greedily indulging in things for things which may not be connected to my spiritual progress, like that? So if we are very attentive to these 6 things, then it will make us slowly detached from material things. So first thing we discussed, asat trishna. Okay, then the second is, what was the second obstacle that we discussed?
Hridaya Daurbalyam.
What is Hridaya Daurbalyam? What is Hridaya Daurbalyam?
Weakness of the heart.
Yeah, weakness of heart. What are the 4 kinds of Hridaya Daurbalyam that we discussed?
Envy,
Envy is 1. Second,
desire for fame,
desire for fame. Very good. What is the third? What is the third? Can someone? Deceitfulness and fault finding. Yeah, that is the third type. And what is the fourth?
Attachment
Can
to
someone
objects that may distract us from Krishna.
attachment to objects which may distract us from Krishna consciousness. So as we saw, these are four things, four symptoms of a malnourished heart. So now the solution for this is we have to nourish our heart. So what is the solution? How do we nourish our heart? In the same book, Nectar of Instruction, in the 4th verse, Srila Rupa Goswami gives a very beautiful solution for this. He says, Dadati pratigrunnati guhyamakyati pruchati bhunkte bhojayate chaiva shadvidam priti lakshanam. He says, the heart is malnourished because it is not experiencing the affection of other devotees. So if the heart is not experiencing the affection of fellow practitioners, then it becomes malnourished. Then it starts envying those very same people with whom we are supposed to establish a very close bond, with whom we start finding faults with those people with whom we are supposed to cooperate and progress together, helping each other in our spiritual journey. So how do we overcome this problem? So we can overcome this problem by following the 6 simple principles when we deal with devotees. Dadati. Dadati means share some gifts with them. Pratigrunnati. And when they give some gifts in return, gratefully accept it. Then the 3rd principle is bhunkte. Bhunkte means when they invite you over for lunch, prasadam, accept it. And bhojayate, and sometimes you can invite them over to your house for prasadam. This is the 4th principle. The 5th principle is, if you do these 4 preliminary principles properly, exchanging gifts and inviting others for prasadam, and you can accept their invitation. So this forges a very basic preliminary platform for deepening a relationship. Then in some cases, the relationship may take the next level, where we start feeling comfortable revealing our heart in confidence to the other person. What are the struggles that I'm undergoing? We may start feeling comfortable sharing our heart to the other person, because we feel very confident that this person is a very trustworthy person, and I have a very same frequency match with this person. So I feel very comfortable sharing my heart with this person. One may feel like that. And when he is going through some trouble, he or she is going through some trouble, you have all the time to listen to that person with great empathy. So this is all symptom of an affectionate bond has been forged between these two people. So through these 6 exchanges, when you practice these 6 exchanges with devotees, you start developing such a powerful affectionate bond with each other. When the heart becomes nourished with that affection, then you would not envy a person with whom you have great affection. Your parents have great affection for you. So even though they may have studied, they may have only a bachelor's degree, but they will be more happy than you if you go ahead and do a master's degree or a PhD degree. They must have been earning maybe in thousands. If you earn in lakhs, they will be more happier than you. Why? Because there is an affectionate bond that exists. They may not see your faults, or even if they see your faults, it is only for correcting you so that others don't see those faults in you. Okay. So in this way, if you see, if we invest, if on the path of spirituality, if there is one investment which is really worth investing, it is investing in establishing a loving relationship with other devotees. So if you can invest in this, then we can overcome, then our heart becomes very powerfully nourished. We can overcome the symptoms of malnourishment, which are envy, deceitfulness, fault finding, desire to become very famous, wanting to be the center of attraction. We will not feel that way at all. We will be very happy in pushing someone else to hog that limelight, because we are sufficiently nourished with affection that we don't want that thrill and kick that comes from becoming famous. We realize that that is a very cheap kind of thrill, cheap kind of happiness. I am actually much more fulfilled and satisfied experiencing the affection of other devotees. So, and the means of investing to develop that kind of a relation, because that's not going to happen overnight, it needs a lot of investment. And the means of investing in such relationships is giving gifts, accepting gifts, inviting people for prasadam and accepting their invitation, and eventually when we feel comfortable, when the other person has time, revealing one's own heart in confidence, and when he wants to reveal his heart in confidence, we hear that from with empathy. So this is the solution for overcoming weakness of heart. So as I told you before, for some of you this may not be very relevant immediately, but because you all have taken up, at least with different levels of commitment, or you all are convinced to various degrees that ultimately I want to pursue this path of spirituality, maybe sometime in future you may realize that we are going through these obstacles. So what notes you are taking now, this might come handy for some of us, maybe immediately, for some of us maybe in near future, for some of us maybe in little late future, when we actually start facing this, we are already facing these obstacles, we may start realizing these obstacles little later. So these few simple tips can come handy. Okay, and I'll quickly wrap up the other two obstacles. We saw Tattva Vibhrama. Tattva Vibhrama means not having proper understanding of the essential truths. The solution for this is to connect ourselves properly to the teachings, to the proper teachings which are in the form of books, and also mentors who may demystify the various kinds of concepts in those books for our to us. Okay, so in this way we can overcome the improper understanding of various subject matters. So this is the solution for Tattva Vibhrama. And finally, aparad or offenses. We can overcome offenses by practicing the first verse of Nectar of Instruction. The first verse of Nectar of Instruction is Vacho Vegam, Manasa Krodha Vegam, Jihva Vegam, Udaropasta Vegam, Etan Veganyo Vishaheta Dira, Sarvan Apimam Prithivimsta Sishyat. So very interesting verse, first verse, very first verse of Nectar of Instruction says, Vacho Vegam, if you if we have an urge to speak, and if it is not very useful, we should try to control that urge, because if we are not trying to control that urge to speak, then we end up offending many people. You want to You see that someone is not very palatably dressed. Of course, dressing is their choice. We don't have to necessarily go and point it out to them. But if you are not able to control that urge to speak, then you may end up offending that person. Oh, why are you so lousily dressed? So the other person may say, may think that, you know, I am very fashionably dressed. And he may feel very good about his own, the way he is dressed. But you go and say, why are you so lousily dressed? And you end up offending that person. So if you cannot control the urge to speak, then it leads to offenses. Manasa Vegam. Manasa Vegam means if you are not able to control our thoughts, which may run in different directions, then we will end up actually acting on those thoughts, and that also will lead to offenses. Then the third is Krodha Vegam. When anger comes, if you don't have a reasonably good way of controlling that urge of anger, then that can lead to serious offenses. When you blast on someone, then he will feel very hurt and offended, and offending other people, especially other practitioners, will act as an obstacle to our own progress on the path of devotional service. Okay. Then Jihva Vegam. Jihva Vegam means if you are not able to control your tongue, so then you are inviting others to offend you. So in a public gathering, if you are eating too much, people may look at you and say, oh, he's a glutton. So then he is offending you. And if you somehow get to hear it, then you get an offensive feeling towards the other person, like that. And Udara Vegam. And Udara Vegam is again, if you are not able to control the tongue, then you are not able to control your belly also. That also leads to other people developing offensive attitude, and you are developing in return. And then eventually Upastha Vegam. If you are not able to control the urge of our genitals also, then it can lead to serious offenses. So like that. So of course, what we have actually discussed today, each aspect can be elaborated for many days, but I have just given you a zip file of everything. Each one can be unzipped and elaborated for a long time, and it has many essential points. But for now, I think we have discussed a lot of subject matter. This is lot of food for thought. So I think I will pause here because we have discussed a lot, and we'll leave some time for some discussions, questions, some reflections. If you would like to share, I'll be very happy, and others would also be very grateful.
I have a question.
Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah, Hare Krishna, thank you. Wonderful lectures. Last week you gave a story about the Chinese farmer, the horse and the sun and the war and all this stuff. I thought it was a great story, but I didn't get the point of it. What is it, detachment? Is it being dhira? You know, like, what do you mean by dhira, or even minded, or what was the point of the story? Well, what's like, in a few words, because I send it out to a bunch of people, and I said, I don't know what the point is, and everybody has their own point, and so we're speculating. So what is the point of the story?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. So the point of that story was that actually we are very short-sighted to really evaluate whether a particular situation that we are put in, whether is it beneficial for us or it is a very unfortunate situation that we are in. The point is, as human beings, as tiny living entities, we are actually very short-sighted to really evaluate and properly understand whether that particular situation is a fortunate situation or an unfortunate situation. We are very short-sighted to understand. But if we put ourselves under the guidance of the Supreme Lord, the Absolute Truth, then from his bird's eye view, he can clearly see what is a fortunate situation, what is an unfortunate situation. So that's the point. So the point is, we cannot attach too much importance to our own evaluation of a particular situation. That is the point. Is that clear, Prabhu?
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Anything else?
At least
Hare
for me.
Krishna.
Yes, please,
Yes.
please go ahead.
Sorry, Prabhuji. You can go ahead, Prabhuji.
No. Please go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you for sharing such a wonderful, so many good points. I can really actually connect with myself. So I had a small question, Prabhuji. Sometimes I tend to expect more from myself, and which causes like I find myself deviated from both spirituality and my studies. So how to deal with that problem, Prabhuji?
You tend to expect little more from yourselves. I mean, if it could be either you are expecting that you chant more rounds, which means you would start getting focused in spirituality, or if you are feeling that oh, I want to do very well in my research and my studies, then which will let you focus on your studies. Then what is the third thing that your third expectation that you have from yourself? I'm just trying to understand.
Maybe my responsibilities for my family, Prabhuji.
Oh, that's a very good responsibility that we should feel that way. So that's very good. So if you feel responsible for your family, there is definitely a space for it. We cannot give up that responsibility also. But at the same time, like we have to see whether whatever little thing that we are doing, it's helping our family or not, because they may not have that expectation from us, but we may feel that expectation and we may end up doing many things which they may not need also. So we can always find that out, and if that is necessary, we can definitely do it. See, the thing is balancing. We have to learn to balance, uh, because family responsibilities we cannot neglect. So if you feel responsible towards your family, then to act in that capacity is definitely not getting distracted. I personally don't feel that way.
Yeah, that is true, Prabhuji. Maybe I get affected mostly when I over expect from myself in my studies, and of course in my spirituality, that I tend to compare, Prabhuji, with others, that I think I'm not very much serious in spirituality. That so I feel agitated and frustrated, Prabhuji. So yeah,
that
I
is
don't
why
know what's the right. Yeah.
That's what we discussed today. When we start comparing with others, eventually sometimes we get frustrated, sometimes we get envious. The means of overcoming that is start developing loving friendships with other devotees, and when you start experiencing their affection, then gradually you will see these other symptoms of envy and frustration will start evaporating away. So ultimately, this comparison and envy and jealousy, these are symptoms of as we discussed, malnourished heart. So the means of nourishing the heart is through these 6 exchanges. So start having these 6 exchanges with devotees, and gradually over a period of time, when we start experiencing the affection from the other party, that affection will nourish us, and slowly these other obstacles will start evaporating away. Is that okay?
Yes, Prabhuji, thank you very much
Thank you.
for
Hare
answering
Krishna.
the question. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I have one question on behalf of Swati Mataji.
Yes, sir.
Her audio is not working. So
Okay.
she just wanted me to ask you how to overcome past grudges.
How to overcome past grudges? Yeah, this is not very easy, especially if the more deep rooted they are, it's very difficult to overcome. But two things we could do. One thing is to understand that these grudges are actually grudges in themselves are obstacles, but by holding these grudges we are hurting ourselves much more than what we think. We are affecting the person against whom we are holding that grudge. He may not even realize it, or sometimes we may, through our facial expressions, through our demeanor, we may let that grudge be known to that other person also. But the thing is, in all likelihood, we are probably suffering much more, way beyond. So which means we are allowing that person to affect us much more than just that one incident. So the thing is, we have to introspect and try to understand that is it really worth it. It is mentioned that it is like to hold these grudges. Of course, to speak is easy, but I also suffer sometimes with this problem. It is like burning a hot coal to our heart. The longer you hold, the longer we only get burnt. So better give it up. It is not worth it. There are so many other worthy things to meditate upon, and if we invest and in various kinds of investing in establishing affectionate relationships with others, then we have something positive to meditate on rather than these kind of grudges. So we have to understand what effect holding that grudge is having on my own spiritual progress, and try to understand, let it go, and rather invest on establishing loving relationships with other devotees, so that we have something positive to meditate on. So that is one. And second thing is, many times these grudges are mainly a product of lack of communication. Many times, I'm not telling all the grudges, but at least some of the grudges can be overcome when we go communicate and patch up. But many times our ego does not allow us to do that patching up work, and we end up suffering for very long. So better keep the communication channel always open. Go communicate, patch up, and then we feel very much relieved. And so therefore, these are some small pointers. First, to understand how it's affecting me so seriously and it's not really worth it. And second is to keep the communication channel open so that we resolve it. Is that okay? Yeah. Hare Krishna.
Balaram Shakti Prabhu, I have a question. Hare Krishna.
Yes. Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhu, thank you for the enlightening talk. And, as you said, it is so much food for thought that we can probably think about it all our lives, what you said.
Because I don't know when will be the next opportunity that I may get to have your association. So I thought maybe I can give you a zip file. You can keep unzipping it for the rest of your life. So
Prabhu, Krishna willing, it will happen very soon again, your association with us.
Let's see. Yeah.
So Prabhu, my question is, and this probably holds true for a lot of devotees in this current world, but I'm a physician and I feel my biggest obstacle is time. So where does that fit into the 16 obstacles, lack of time? Which category does that fill in?
So Prabhu, you don't, the point is to not have sufficient time is not necessarily a disadvantage, because at least you are gainfully engaged both physically and mentally, which is very good. you don't have time to while away, which is a great benediction. So I don't see, compared to others who have lot of time to while away, they just keep planning that, oh, I have so much time, I will utilize it in my spiritual endeavors. But most often than not, it never happens. So if you say that you don't have sufficient time, please don't feel bad. You are in a very good position, because your lifestyle is such that you don't waste it, you don't have time to waste. So that what one thing that you can do is try doing the bare minimum things that are for your spiritual progress, and keep this mood on and keep the fire on, that when I get time, I will utilize it for Krishna's purpose. So keep that fire on. So I understand that a physician's job is not very easy. It's very time consuming. It takes a lot of time, but it's very good, because you're engaged in a way that helps many other people. So once you slowly start, when that responsibility starts going down, because you are used to spending your time in a gainful way, you would naturally, if the fire if the fire of aspiration to progress spiritually is on, eventually when you start getting time, it will naturally get channelized uh, in Krishna's activities. So I think you are quite good. To have too much free time is a great danger, actually. So you are doing quite well, so you don't have to feel bad.
Thank you for giving such a beautiful perspective, Prabhu. I never thought it like that, but you're so right. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Anything else?
Looks like
Yeah.
I think the zip file is too huge, Prabhu.
Yeah.
They're still trying to assimilate what you have spoken.
Yeah. See if you
Takes a
can
while.
download it, and then you can start unzipping.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hi. Yes, Mataji.
I have one question about the mystic powers you were telling. There are a lot of different experience people get. Have read few things. I mean, very little I've read about out of body experience and all those things. So can you put some light and share? I mean, what exactly happens and why does it happen?
Okay. So out of body experience is not exactly a mystic power. It is something. I mean, I don't know if your focus of the question is on mystic powers or out of body experience, but I will try to speak little bit about both. Mystic powers is, basically it has something to do with control, where you are actively pursuing it. You want to have control. It's like something called anima. Anima is, there are 8 prominent mystic powers. There are other secondary mystic powers also. Anima means to become lighter than the lightest, so that you can move around without any issue anywhere. Like that. Anima means to become, smaller than the smallest. Then lagima means to become lighter than the lightest. Like that. There are prapti. Prapti means while sitting in wherever you are sitting, you can acquire some object from India. Of course, that prapti siddhi is exercised through Amazon in today's day and age. Whatever you want, you can just go online, and then the next day you can get prapti siddhi.
Right.
And like that, all these, so some people are like compulsive buyers. They are marketing, e-marketing, especially in today's day and age, where you can't very go out and safely market. You are sitting all the time online and like that. So that kind of control. But out of body experience, sometimes when people have, it's not something one willingly does. So sometimes when one is at the verge of passing away, or sometimes during in an operation theater or somewhere, sometimes it may happen that as we saw, along with the soul there is a subtle body. So the subtle body is made of subtle senses, mind, intelligence and all. So that subtle body exists within this gross body of ours. So sometimes the subtle body may for a while come out of the gross body and start observing the gross body from outside. So that can happen, still having a small connection with the gross body. And then eventually it might come back again and reside within the gross body. So sometimes people, especially in operation theaters, they recollect having out of body experiences, especially when there is a heart surgery or something like that, something very close to leaving, but then eventually the surgeon gets back his, he starts fixing it up so that the subtle body comes back again, like that. Sometimes such experiences are there, but this is not exactly wanting that siddhi. This is something that incidentally happens. This is not considered exactly as a siddhi, like that.
So that experience, whatever they get, is that they're going into like Jyotir level.
Not really. It is just like every one. Sometimes it may happen that actually the surgeon is not able to save that person. Then that subtle body goes from that gross body to another gross body. And then it gets the form of a child, and while in the form of a child, the child cannot remember anything. But sometimes it may happen that subtle body had to leave, but then the problem has been fixed, so it comes back, and therefore that memory is there of seeing the body itself, like that. So it is nothing like that. It is naturally, it happens to everyone when the transmigration happens. So it must have happened to all of us millions of times. When we left one body to move on to the other body, the subtle body travels from one gross body to another gross body. It always happens like that.
Because I read from Satyanandan Maharaj's experience that he was mentioning that he was getting operated and he had the out of body experience, and so I just thought I'll ask that question. Thank you.
It can happen. It can happen to anyone, Mataji. It's not something very special. It happens everywhere.
But do they stay? What is the time frame usually it happens, Prabhuji? Do they stay for longer, or the time?
I don't know the details for how long that subtle body may get suspended before it comes back again or moves to the other gross body. I don't know the details. It could be for a short while, it could be for a longer while. I don't know the details, but just that it's possible and it has been experienced, that much I know.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So Prabhu, I think there may be other devotees also who might want to ask the questions. Russell Prabhu and Judy Mataji, do you have any questions or?
Well, I had one, but it's not really related to anything we've been talking about.
Okay.
But I can.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, please go ahead.
It's always seemed to me the process of creation was really complicated. So I just thought maybe, if you don't mind, you could briefly discuss the roles of the three Krishnas, for instance, and their significance, and Balarama also. Thank you.
Okay. So I will just very briefly discuss, as Prabhuji mentioned, that it's not immediately connected to the topic, but still. So the role of three Vishnus, there are three Vishnus, Karanodakasai Vishnu, Garbhodakasai Vishnu, and Shirodakasai Vishnu. Those of you, for some of you, it may be, you may not have heard about them. So Garbhodakasai Vishnu is from whose bodily pores many universes emanate in their seed form. So, and then eventually when the universes emanate from in the seed form, then Karanodakasai Vishnu, he glances at them, and through that glance he impregnates the living entities in each of these universes, and eventually the creation process starts, because along with through the glance there is the living entity, then the time factor is also impregnated in that particular universe. So when the time acts on that universe, then it agitates the three modes which are there in the universe, and the three modes start, they start the creation process. Of course, I'm not going into detail because it's a very long discussion. And somewhere down the line, when all the ingredients for universal creation are ready through this glancing of Karanodakasai Vishnu, and there are millions of individual universes, then an expansion of Karanodakasai Vishnu called as Garbhodakasai Vishnu, he enters into each one of these universes, and he helps in conglomerating all these individual elements and makes it into a functional universe. So that is the role of Garbhodakasai Vishnu. There is one Garbhodakasai Vishnu for every universe, but there is only one Karanodakasai Vishnu who is like the super soul of all the material universes. And for individual universes, one Garbhodakasai Vishnu is the super soul. Then within each universe, every living entity has to be empowered to act according to their nature. So the third expansion, Shirodakasai Vishnu, he acts as the super soul of individual living entities. In everyone's heart, you have one Shirodakasai Vishnu who empowers that particular living entity to act according to his own nature, like that. So that is the role of course, this creation is an elaborate subject matter. We could discuss it for long, but because it's not immediately connected to our discussion today, this is just a brief description. Is that okay? Thank you.
Prabhu, I have one question, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu.
So Asat Trishna, the last point, which is very relevant for all of us, attachment to not wanting to suffer in this material world.
Yeah.
Suffering is something which is like inevitable. Everyone is bound to suffer at some point in their life. But when this phase comes, the desire to not suffer in this material world and go back to Krishna is something normal. Everyone will aspire, because I'm done with this suffering. Throughout my life, I've been going through whatever I was going through. I just want to go back. I just want to leave this material world. So I'm trying to understand the solution what you gave for Asat Trishna, especially the Rupa Goswami talking in the second verse of Nectar of Instruction.
Correct.
Which aspect of the second verse of Nectar of Instruction can be connected to that one last segment of the Asat Trishna?
See, it is not just one of them. Basically, if you see the science behind suggesting the second verse as an antidote for this Asat Trishna, basically, the more we are materially absorbed, the more we are attuned to the material suffering also, when that thing goes away. So, the more, so these 6 things, Atyahara, Prayasa, Prajalpa, Niyamagraha, these 6 things make us absorbed within the material sphere. So when we are absorbed within the material sphere, then material suffering is also, we are very sensitive to experiencing it.
I see. Okay.
But if we are not absorbed in the material sphere, then we have all the space available for getting absorbed in the spiritual sphere.
Mm.
And if we are absorbed in the spiritual sphere, then we don't notice the material suffering.
That makes sense, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Thank
If
you.
there are no questions, are there any other questions? One last time. Okay. So, Prabhuji, I would like to, thank you. And I don't know. So again, once you go back to GEV, then I don't know if we can even get an opportunity to get this association again. But I would really, really request you, Prabhu, if at all you have any opportunity, please spend some time with us. At least like once in a quarter to start with.
I'm sure we can do something like that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So
it was very nice. I also had a very nice time spending with all of you. Very relevant questions you all brought out. So I'm very happy to have this association.
Thank you so much once again, Prabhuji. So are there anyone wants to say anything, or we can continue with the next session?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hari Bol for Balram Shakti Prabhu.
Hari Bol.
Hari Bol.
So, generally we always show our appreciation by loudly chanting Hari Bol 3 times to Prabhuji. Even though it's like early in the morning, but still he has taken some time for all of us. So let's say a very big Hari Bol to Prabhuji for 3 times. Hari Bol!
Hari Bol! Hari Bol!
Hari Bol! Ram Shakti Prabhu ki
Hari
jai.
Bol!